Tennessee recruiting. Who is the next commit that's going to pledge to the Big Orange? That and so much more. It's your Thursday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Thursday morning edition of Locked On Vols. Pleased to have you here. Pull up a chair. We're going to have fun for the next 35 minutes or so. A couple of great guests are set to join the show. Matt Ray, my colleague at VolQuest.com. He's going to tell me and you guys everything we don't know that's happening on the recruiting trail right now. He was at the Under Armour All-American Camp Series down there in Atlanta, Georgia over the weekend. He's made some stops around the Peach State. So Matt Ray going to give us a status report, Tennessee football recruiting here in segment number one. And then pleased to have on Chase Thomas from the Chase Thomas Podcast. Going to talk a little bit of everything. Tennessee football, Boo Carter, who are some of the leaders for Tennessee. Boo Carter at wide receiver for Tennessee. Tennessee baseball getting going. All that and more. He's got a great podcast, a great show that's found daily as well. So Chase Thomas is going to join the show. This show couldn't be made possible without our friends today over at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All that and more over at FanDuel Sportsbook. So without further ado, let's welcome in Matt Ray, VolQuest.com, to tell us what we don't know about Tennessee recruiting right now. Matt, you were down in Atlanta, Georgia for the Under Armour Camp Series over the weekend. What were some of the highlights that you saw, some players you spoke to, and of course Tennessee very much interested in a number of prospects who are in attendance, I would imagine.
Yeah, so, initial glance at the first roster release kind of early in the week was exciting. A few no-shows kind of took a hit away from the roster. Was really excited to see Tristan Givens and Hezekiah Harris work, two really talented edges that Tennessee's recruited for some time. Neither one were able to make it to the camp. So, that was kind of a letdown just from, a personal standpoint of wanting to see both of those two really talented edges, get some work in. But overall, paid a lot of attention to the offensive line, defensive line groupings. Tyson Bacon, Tennessee commit in attendance. I think he's a guy whose stock is up. I mean, I really do. I've said it for some time. Tennessee got him here back in the summer, got him back in the fall. He ended up committing, toward the end of the season there. Since then, January contact period, Eric, it's been Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Florida State, Auburn, Michigan. All these schools have come in on him. I talked with him for a while ahead of camp on Sunday morning, and he will take some official visits. And that's something he's been pretty transparent with the Tennessee staff about. They've expected him to blow up. He's expected to blow up. So he still remains pretty firm in his Tennessee commitment, but he's planning to see Georgia on May 16th and Florida on June 13th before seeing Tennessee the last week of June of official visits. And then he'll work on, making sure everything's finalized, everything's where it needs to be at that point. It's not something he wants to drag out, but he's a guy measured in probably around 6'4", 265 on the weekend. And man, he moves extremely well. So that was one of the highlights of the day was, I've seen him around in person, seen the frame before, but getting to watch him move, getting to watch him work one-on-one, really a guy that can extend, make plays, shed blocks, and do a lot of different things. Former Tennessee commit Brandon Anderson was one of those guys that Bacon went head-to-head with, and they split reps. I thought from a standpoint, Anderson was one of the more technically sound offensive linemen there. You can see the power along the interior from him. Talked with him after camp. The plan right now is to take 6 official visits. I've heard upwards of 8 have been, kind of thrown around. So
with a commitment, sometime in September? Is that what he's
potentially sometime in September? So we'll kind of see where that one goes. He reiterated that the main thing with Tennessee is continuing to feel the love, feel like he's wanted there, can still definitely see himself at Tennessee. But to me right now, I think Florida State has picked up some momentum there. Georgia very much involved, Alabama involved, Florida involved. So we'll kind of see where this one shakes out. But in my notes on the General's quarters throughout the day on Sunday, I get the feel that this one could end up being a thrill a minute down the stretch. For him. And then another guy got to pay close attention to on Sunday was Bear McWhorter, and he's a guy that Tennessee's recruited pretty hard for some time. Has been to campus a number of times. As I worked camp and watched him, always continue to talk to people. Started getting the feeling leading into the interview portion of camp and have kind of felt this way for a little bit now that the Vols had some ground to make up. And that's obviously very apparent as now he has released his top 5 with a commitment date of February 28th. And Tennessee did not make that top list of schools, but they'll continue recruiting him up here and, until the end. But right now he's planning to commit, take one official visit to the school that he commits. And to me, at this point, based on kind of what I've gathered, Alabama and Michigan have separated themselves from the pack.
Yeah, that sounds nice. Committing in February, taking one official visit to that one school. I'm sure it's going to work out that way, right?
Yeah,
those things never change, do they?
Yeah, it always seems to work out that way.
Well, not only were you down in Atlanta on Sunday or this weekend for the Under Armour Camp Series, you've been stopping by some different programs and schools in Georgia the last couple of days. Talk about a couple of linebackers that you caught up with, Braden Rouse, a guy that Tennessee really, really likes, and then a guy that Tennessee's been on for quite some time, but everybody's on, Tyler Atkinson, number 1 ranked linebacker in the country, top 10 player overall in the cycle. What do those guys have to say about Tim Banks, William Inge, about said Brian Jean-Marie, William Inge, and of course Tennessee football?
Yeah, so starting with Braden Rouse, he's a guy that we've been talking about for some time over at VolQuest. He's a guy that stock up again, like Tyson Bacon. I think he told me on Thursday morning, he was my first stop of the day, that he's over 41 Division I offers now. I think the first time I ever talked to him, he had 6. And Tennessee was prioritizing him at that point, making him, feel wanting to try to get him up to game day visits, things like that. So, he's a guy that continues to say all the right things when it comes to Tennessee. His dad is the recruiting coordinator there at Cale. So, he's pretty detailed into the process. They're trying to do things the right way. He and I talked a pretty good bit about visits, what's next, what he's looking for. To start with that piece, only one official visit locked in right now, and that's to Tennessee. And to me, that's telling of where he's at this point in the recruitment. He wanted to get that visit locked in. He wanted to get that visit there when Tennessee wanted him there, around that date, which I do believe to be that June 20 to June 22nd weekend at this point. He's going to take some other official visits. Georgia's recruiting him hard. LSU's picking up, trying to recruit him hard. Georgia Tech's recruiting him hard. He's a guy that academically, has the grades to go to a school like Georgia Tech if he wanted to. So there's a lot of things at play with him, but his relationships with Tennessee continue to stand out to me. One thing that also stood out to me during my time with him was that he's going to go see some of these schools that have offered him. He's been to Georgia. He's been to Georgia Tech. He's been to Tennessee. He's been to a few select schools. Now he feels like he's got to go see some of these other schools in the spring, but he kind of came back around and said, I might still end up, checking out Tennessee for a spring practice. I think for him right now, there's a strong desire to keep getting back to Tennessee as often as he can. And that's why I continue to think the Vols are in a really good spot with him coming out of the winter. Tyler Atkinson, man, you kind of summed it up. Everybody in the country is on Tyler Atkinson. And to me, that's an uphill battle for any program, really. I think when you look at it, even Georgia, who I think should probably be assumed as the favorite, given the fact that they're the home state program. It's been some time since they've landed a dude out of Grayson. Which has turned into a football factory for the last 20 years. But it's been
Tennessee's gotten a couple of linebackers out of there.
Yeah, it's been a while since they've landed it. Georgia's landed a dude from out there, but obviously they've been recruiting Tyler Atkinson since 8th grade. I think Tennessee for him has done a really good job of recruiting the family as a whole. And the more that I've talked to people around Grayson connected to that program inside the world of college football, I think that's something very important to him, to his family, is that piece. It's going to be a family top decision. Obviously, there's going to be NIL factors at play. There's going to be all those things at play. And that's why, again, I say that it's kind of an uphill battle for anybody at this point. When you're recruiting a guy like that, what's a family truly thinking, deep down? You can recruit them as hard as you can, as effectively as you can, but what's a family like that really thinking when you've got Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee? I mean, I can just keep going down the list. So we'll kind of see. I look for him to possibly narrow his list at some point, before really getting into those official visits, obviously. And we'll kind of see where Tennessee falls at in that. He's so non-committal on who's going to get a spring visit, who's going to get an official visit. Like, he's not willing to say, I'm going anywhere. Like, it always kind of came back to, we're going to sit down and decide this. And I believe that's true. I believe they kind of take things step by step. But I think William Inge has done a really good job there with the family. I think the in-home visit in January for Tennessee went well. Josh Heupel, William Inge spent time with the Atkinson family, one of only 3 programs to get an in-home visit. So that was pretty important, I think. But we'll kind of see where things go. He was born in Knoxville. Family spent time in Knoxville. So you've got some things working in a small manner, I think, in your favor. Not the biggest pieces of momentum with that. But at the end of the day, you just keep kind of plugging along for a guy like that and see where things go. But, I think Tennessee's obviously got work to do. They're probably not in the top 2 or 3 of this right now on the surface looking in, but they're in it, and he's going to consider all options down the stretch.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on all that FanDuel, all that action than over at FanDuel. It is America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game super exciting, whether I'm backing my team for that late-game rally or picking up a player to hit in a clutch 3. I've never feel like I've missed a chance to put some coin in my pocket. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. No more waiting around, endless hours at a time to get paid. You get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com today to get started. That's FanDuel.com to shoot your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. Official sports betting partner of the NBA, and of course, it is where you can make every moment more. That is FanDuel. Chase, I joined your show here on a Thursday as well, and a topic that you brought up that I thought was a really good topic because I don't talk about it that much. It's one of those I got to see it to believe it, but Boo Carter, how much are you expecting or how much do you think Tennessee should use Boo Carter, his freshman All-SEC last year, defensive back, on the offensive side of the football?
I think it's a lot. I think you have nothing to lose going into 2025 in the receiver room. I think there is so much uncertainty there that I just kind of wiped the deck of who's going to earn it, who's going to get an opportunity, just open it up, true freshmen, redshirt freshmen. You have one upperclassman right now in that room with Chris Brazel, and he's a transfer. So, I just look at this situation as hey, Boo Carter is a known commodity in terms of what he can flash in the punt return game. Because we talked about this with D. Williams, where it never really made sense that D a couple of years ago didn't at least get some snaps for Tennessee on offense because he was so shifty, because he had such a good first step and hard tackle. And I think part of the reason that I'm more bullish on Boo being someone who can help you in the slot on offense is that when I'm a big NFL guy, you're a big NFL guy. One of the things you read, and part of the reason that the San Francisco 49ers were so good for that run before this year, everything just blew up on them, was that they doubled down on tackling just being so bad in the NFL now. And maybe it's practice, maybe it's just where the sport's going in terms of tackling and the fundamentals there, that tackling has never been worse in the sport. And I think Boo Carter is a very difficult player to tackle. And I understand there might be some that's some minimalist thinking here. But I think
that's a really good point because, again, it's so minimal that we don't think about it. The point of playing defense is to tackle the ball carrier. Mm-hmm. Boo Carter makes it hard to do that. So, that's a good point.
Well, and I think he's the hardest to tackle on this team, maybe. We both watched Bradley Central and what he was able to do. We know, in the Georgia game, if the punter, Thorson, doesn't trip him up at the end, make a great play as the punter for Georgia, he's gone. Boo Carter is, I think, going to be a natural just playmaker for Tennessee. And I think he's going to be even better at the star position next year for Tennessee as he just flashed in a lot of ways and took on a lot of, he was the only true freshman starter for Tennessee last year across the board. Everyone else was not a true freshman. He was it. I just think he is the sky is the limit for Boo. And I'm not saying he needs to be Travis Hunter with just 100+ snaps, but do I think you are so lacking for guys who are good yak guys potentially, because no one last year was breaking tackles and scared defenses like that. It's just the reality is I love Brew, but the Brew of before the South Carolina game of 2023 and how he looked there versus what we saw last year was just not the same player. Brazel, not the same player. Dante Thornton was your only guy that scared defenses, I think, at the receiver room, and he wasn't playing 40 to 50 snaps a game. He wasn't someone who was on the field and could stay on the field that consistently for Tennessee, but really good player, was by far and away your best receiver all last year. But I just think Boo Carter, if I had to bet on one of these receivers and throw Boo in of like who's most likely to be someone that scares opposing defenses and gives opposing defenses problems in the slot, the answer is Boo. Like I think he will be hard to tackle. I think he can do some stuff where if you do those screens out wide, like I don't want to be trying to bring down Boo Carter if I'm an opposing defense.
You mentioned maybe having Boo as a red zone threat, kind of like the way they used Valus a couple of years ago. And I was big on the way that they used Valus. Valus was a running back's body and wide receiver speed. Okay, that's why he was so dynamic. But they used him, and they should, in my opinion, have used Brew McCoy like this year. They didn't, but they should have. They used Valus as like a pinball, right? I mean, they're going to throw him the underneath stuff. They're going to go to the yard marker, turn around, throw it to him. Just let him bounce off tacklers, and then have somebody else be the deep threat, like a Dante Thornton, like a Jalen Hyatt the next year. So they used Valus different than they used Jalen Hyatt in the slot from 2021 to 2022. Both were very effective. I wish we'd have saw Brew, kind of take on that role. That's why, with all the injuries towards the end of the season, I was hoping Brew would slide down and play slot. He's been here 3 years. He knows how to play it, and he could have kind of taken on that role. If you implement Boo Carter, say it's slot receiver, and you use him as kind of the underneath stuff, that's to his strengths. Evading tacklers. What is punt returning? Punt returning is completely different than kick returning. Kick returning, you catch the kick, you got guys 20, 30 yards away from you. It's all about vision, speed, of course, elusiveness helps. But punt returning, you catch the football with a guy in your face. It's all about making guys miss. So, to your point, having Boo Carter as kind of like that pinball there in the slot, I'm not saying he'll play 30, 40 snaps a game, but boy, that'd be a nice little weapon, and I would love to see it. We fans talk about it a lot. I know that was talked about in keeping here at Tennessee and everything. I'm still in the we'll see it to believe it, but boy, I think it could help Tennessee in a big way because that's his skill set, and that's what Velus Jones did very well here at Tennessee.
Can I throw this at you? And this is just an all-time, I think, what if with this group. What if the Boo Carter's best strength is on offense at receiver, and like that's his actual best skill set that can help Tennessee, and Mike Matthews' best skill set is at safety, and like we got them both on the wrong side of like the offense and defense. Like that's something I've been thinking about too, of just like I just think Boo Carter is just such a natural playmaker that I'm not sure. I mean, he's really good at star, but it's like, what if giving him 60, 70 snaps at slot, is that better? And then if you slide in, I mean, if Jordan Thomas was healthy, that makes this a lot easier. And he like just someone, because I mean, he was slated to start last year before the injury. Like if you have that, or maybe Caleb Beasley runs with it and he figures it out and he's a solid star, whoever it is, I don't know. Is that more valuable than, I don't know. Like I just thought about that where I'm like, you're just so unclear at what this is going to look like at receiver this year that just there's some nagging part of me, Eric, that I just feel like Boo would be your best receiver if you made him a full-time receiver in 25.
It's funny. There's a lot of people that think that Mike Matthews would become a better safety in college because he was so good in high school. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're a 5-star. You play all over the field. It's fun to think about that exercise because, I think we all want to see Boo with the ball in his hands. We saw it in the high school realm. We see him as a punt returner here in the Southeastern Conference, and we're going to see it a little bit here this year. Like I know it's just fun to think about, but like in actuality, like you can't move Mike Matthews away right now because you can't because you have just nobody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that's something funny to think about, and so many guys go on because you don't see so many Travis Hunters, right? You don't see so many. Guys who can play both sides of the ball at such an elite level. I mean, Travis Hunter was like winning the Heisman. I agree with winning the Biletnikoff. Are you kidding me? He was like the 20th best receiver in college football. Like what? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like so many guys might try that, and you're just not. I mean, he was, but you're just not effective enough on both sides of the ball. But maybe Boo Carter. How many guys have come to college and missed out on maybe Hall of Fame careers because they were playing out of position?
Well, I think also Travis Hunter's just a better corner than he is receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Boo might be a better receiver than he is coverage guy.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. We'll continue the football conversation. I want to ask Chase who the leaders are for Tennessee, and if you don't mention one name, then Tennessee's not going to be very good. That and a little bit of Tennessee baseball talk. The reigning national champions are coming back to town. All that and more coming up next as we continue on here with the Thursday Locked On Vols. Chase, who's the leader for Tennessee football? You lost Amari Thomas. You lost Brew McCoy. You've lost a couple of big-time leaders, right? Who's the leader for Tennessee football? Who would you be taking to SEC Media Days right now if it was tomorrow?
I mean, it better be Nico.
There you go. If it's not Nico, that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's not Nico, you got a real issue because, sure, he's not super outgoing. Maybe that's not a strength of his, but you are the quarterback of a team in the Southeastern Conference. If you are not the leader on your football team, what do you have, right? What direction do you have? So it better be Nico.
It better be Nico, but I look around this room. I mean, I was listening to Ethan Davis on Volca Confidential with Austin Price the other day, and I mean, Kitzelman seems like if you ask the players, it seems like he is a natural leader. So I'm going to guess Miles Kitzelman is going to be one of your leaders on offense. Maybe he kind of fills that Cooper Mays role on the just kind of like on the line, physical guy. He's going to block. He's going to be solid. He knows his job, and he's not going to flash. Like Cooper was not the best center in college football last year, but he's good. And you know what you have. And I think Miles Kitzelman's a good safety valve, and he'll be solid. But what I've said about Miles is, and it's not a shot at Miles, it's just if Miles leads you in receiving, Tennessee probably lost that game. If Ethan Davis, though, leads you in receiving, I think Tennessee may have won that game, depending on what they get out of him this year. But Miles, it's not where you want to be. Like Miles, you want to have like 4 receptions, 50 yards, maybe a TD in the red zone, because he is a good red zone target and stuff like that. But I think Kitzelman's got to be one. I'll say, I mean, goodness gracious, it's hard because the offensive line is so unsettled. So there's no obvious leader on the offensive line right now. Like you don't want to throw that at David Sanders right away. It seems like Lance Hurd is not that guy who I hope. I mean, they better hope is a whole lot better. And I think he was turning the corner a little bit down the stretch this year. But I mean, I just look around. I mean, Nico, it just kind of has to be because you lost a lot of Brew McCoy gone, Dylan Sampson gone. You lost some Cooper, like I mentioned, is gone. Amari Thomas on the defensive side. I think Bryson Eason will be a natural guy that fills that void for Amari. I like Bryson a lot. Joshua Joseph's TBD on that one. I don't really know if that's a natural fit. Jackson Moy seems like someone who is fine with a leadership role. But you know who might be an underrated one that because I've just banged this gavel. Like we talked about Cannon Peebles and Boo Carter for me, Eric Kane. The other one I've banged all offseason, just this metaphorical gavel, is Edwin Spillman, I think, is just going to be the next great Tennessee linebacker. And I think this is the most talented that room has been in the 5 years of Josh Heupel on Rocky Top. I think they have a lot of options in that room, and they're not just relying on Keenan Peely to stay healthy and to kind of carry it. I think they've got, with Jeremiah Teenlander, the amount of snaps he's had, Aaron Carter and the amount of snaps he's had. My gut is the Carter-Spillman combination is going to be the best we've seen at Tennessee. So, and if you listen to guys, I mean, I think Ethan Davis talked about him too, of like the hardest worker. He sees him like just working really hard. And I think if he didn't have the injury with his wrist this year, I think he plays a lot of snaps for William Inge. And if you listen to William Inge talk about him, he is clearly a big Edwin Spillman guy. I think Edwin Spillman's be a leader.
William Inge says into account because they're all wearing gold jackets and they're going to the Hall.
But in particular, I don't know. It just feels to me like he loves Edwin Spillman. I think he loves him some Edwin Spillman. So my gut is I think Edwin Spillman's going to be one of the leaders. And I'll throw another one. It's Boo Carter. I think Boo Carter kind of has to be one of your leaders because he's just too good. And I think if he's a leader of I just think he's I want one of my leaders to be a hardcore competitor. And I think Boo Carter is a guy who hates to lose, hardcore competitor, obviously he works his tail off. And if he's playing all these different ways, I think you kind of need him to be a leader.
Yeah, those are interesting. I don't think of Boo Carter and leadership in the same sentence. That's no slight on him. I just don't.
I mean, leadership by work ethic, I think.
Yeah.
Leadership by like, man, I'm doing my job. Like, I need y'all to keep it up.
That's a thing. Edwin Spillman, it was evident. It was obvious what they thought of him because he was hurt in spring or hurt in fall camp, missed the first 2 games, and then immediately is thrusted into action like in big time situations on the road at Oklahoma. And then gets hurt again, and then when he comes back, is immediately thrown in big time series when Tennessee's down 14 points in the first quarter at Vanderbilt. And so yeah, he's going to be a stud. If he was healthy all year long, he would have that combination of Jeremiah Thielen. It's got some limitations, but is a experience, and I think that he's a guy that has made a lot of plays for Tennessee. Aaron Carter, those 3. Then who steps up? I like this freshman class of linebackers as well. But anyway, that's
Jordan Burns too.
Jordan Burns is going to be interesting. I think if I was talking with one of the coaches during one of the media availabilities like back in the fall, and he's like, "Yeah, man. I mean, if he's not hurt right now, he's playing." I'm like, "Really?" I just thought he was kind of it's like he's like, "I know he's back at practice right now, but like he missed so much time, but like we like him. Like he's going to play." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's good for Tennessee." Like
Tennessee's linebackers are quietly loaded. It doesn't feel like it because you're losing Peely, and there's a lot of like guys who just have potential and don't have like the track record outside of T-Lander and Carter, but I don't know. I think the linebackers can be really good for Tennessee this year. I think their front seven's gonna be solid.
Going back to what you said about you're talking about Miles Kitzelman, and we were asked this question on the VolQuest Mailbag podcast this morning too, so that's why I asked you. Some guys got to step up. Nico was first name mentioned. I said it better be him. Miles Kitzelman was mentioned. Bryson Eason was mentioned. Aaron Carter was mentioned. But back to about, you said just a comment in passing before I got to get you out the door. We've already been talking 20 minutes. You and I, man, we could just talk for hours. Yeah. We could just ramble. I hate. Now, Princeton Fant was different. Princeton Fant was a true Swiss Army knife. Princeton Fant used to be a running back. That was different in 2022. But one of my pet peeves, once I'm the commissioner of football, I'm going to abolish it. Giving the football in short line situations, goal line situations to guys who are not running backs. I hate it. I hate giving the football to Miles Kitzelman in that package. Like, sure, he scored at Georgia, but didn't he fumble or he got stuffed at Vanderbilt or I don't know what it is. I cannot stand giving it to guys who don't carry the football in between the tackles, giving them the football in between tackles on 4th and inches or 4th and goal. Can't stand it. Anyway, passing comment. Out the door, do tell me about Tennessee baseball, man. You watch every single game. You write about it. You podcast about it. You know what? I'm at every single game. I write about it. I podcast about it. A lot of talent, man. A lot of questions to be answered. That's typical. But this first month of the season is going to be a whole lot of fun to see if any of those questions get answered. There's so much talent on this roster. What are you looking forward to the most this weekend as Tennessee baseball gets back?
I think I'm just looking forward to all the different combinations because I think it's going to get really weird out of the gate here in a hurry. I think the starting rotation over the weekend, definitely something. I think we're all excited to see what Marcus Phillips looks like in a starting role. And again, it's Hofstra, so there's only so much we can take away from this early slate for Tennessee. But you want to get off to a good start. You want to build some positive appearances here out of the gate. But I mean, Tennessee, like Liam Doyle just seems like a sure thing on Fridays. Tennessee and transfer pitchers is just, that's how they do it on Friday. Like you go back over the years, Eric, it's like the ones who work out are transfers, whether that's Andrew Lindsay, Chase Dolander, and you just keep going back, Dallas, it's just Fridays are for transfers. AJ Kazi last year and Stamos, like you need to have a transfer on Friday nights for the remainder of the Tony Vitello era. But I also just, because of the injury stuff with some key guys, I really am intrigued by the Levi Clarks, the Stone Lawlesses, the Manny Marins. What do they, Chris Newstrom maybe? Who like pops immediately? Because I just think this fan base is very, very locked in. Like the Vol baseball fan base is locked in. Like I think it's a little bit different here than at a lot of spots where they know this class that's come in. They know that there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of promise with where this 25 class is going to be, or 24 class for 25 is going to be. And what if Marin's really good? Like I asked you on our pod is like, who's this year's Dean Curley? And if that's Manny Marin, that means he's going to have a really good year because Dean Curley was really good out of the gate. So I'm excited to see this group because I just think it's fun. It's part of the reason we love Christian Moore and Blake Burke at Tennessee is because you got to see him grow, them both grow over 3 years at Tennessee. And I'm very, very excited to see who that next wave is because transfers I think are going to be solid. Fisher, Keelan, everybody, like they're going to be okay. But I want to see which one of these next dudes rakes. I mean, you got Stone and the Jordan Beck number. Like, I'm here for it. Like, if he's mashing like Jordan Beck, like that's awesome. And his name's Stone Lawless.
Hit
Great.
2 home runs at the second deck of the porch this last weekend.
He's gonna play, and I just think he's gonna be a fan favorite. My gut is Stone Lawless. I mean, is he coming out with Stone Cold's music? By the way, do we know?
I hope so. I don't know.
He
I've
better.
seen a lot of,
He doesn't have a choice. Like that just needs to be like, sorry, man. That's just part of the deal.
Chase, as always, man, thanks so much. Where can listeners and viewers find your work? You put out, again, I say this every time, you put out like 25 podcasts a week. You put me to shame. But where can we find your work, and what are you talking about here? Like, you talk about everything, like baseball, football, NBA, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/JaceThomasPodcast. Like and subscribe there. Apple, Spotify, we're everywhere you get your podcast, JaceThomasPodcast.com for information about the show and everything we got going, past episodes and all that good stuff. But yeah, you can listen the same way, sportsrenaissanceman.com for all my writing and then also links to the show. But yeah, daily show, just like you. Hey man, we're both out here in the daily Tennessee grind. But there's always like my favorite part about being in everything school, as you know, is that there's always stuff to talk about. Like we can talk about Boo Carter here for 10 minutes in mid-February, and fans want to talk about it.
Fun show, right? It's always a good show when I talk less and guests talk more, right? Right? Well, if you liked it, come join us on tomorrow's show. We'll have another guest on as we continue the conversation. Tennessee football recruiting, Tennessee basketball a little bit, looking ahead to the weekend slate against Vanderbilt, but of course, Tennessee baseball. The reigning national champs are back in action beginning tomorrow against Hofstra. Big thanks to Matt Ray, Volquest, and Chase Thomas from the Chase Thomas Podcast for stopping by the show. Hey, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell that Tennessee fan in your life, this is one of the many shows that they can indulge, all right? Like Chase's podcast, we have a lot of crossover with fans and listeners and all that, so if you haven't ever heard of his podcast, go subscribe, check that out. But of course, if you're new to this show, please subscribe. That's how the show continues to grow. We can get in front of more and more Tennessee fans. Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Appreciate you guys as always. Every dayers couldn't do without you. This is Locked On Vols.